There is about 1,000 years between the fall of the Western Roman Empire in the 5th century and the Renaissance in the 15th century. This period is known as the Middle Ages, or the medieval period. It's sometimes called the Dark Ages. They call it this because this is the view of early historians. They believed that this period was this dark middle period between these two golden ages, the Great Roman Empire and the Great Renaissance. They believed that it was an age of ignorance, decline, and barbarianism. Now, this is actually no longer the view, but the terms still stick. The Middle Ages were actually a period of great richness, complexity, and innovation that gave birth to modern Europe. Art historians divide the Middle Ages into 3 periods. The early medieval period, which lasts from the 5th century to the early 11th century, the Romanesque period, which lasts from the 11th to 12th century, and then the Gothic period, which lasts from the mid-12th century into the 15th century. The early medieval period. As early Roman authority fell throughout Europe, it was replaced by strong local leaders of various tribes. So at this time, as you can see on this map, there's no countries, no modern countries anyway. But we do have tribes. These tribes are some of the ones that you see in the maps, and Germanic Franks, Visigoths, Orthogoths, the Saxons, the Norse, and the Celts. These tribes had invaded or settled within much of the Roman Empire during previous centuries. And the breakdown of central power, so when the Romans left, there was this breakdown of central power, and it led to a fusion of Germanic, Celtic, and Roman culture. The unifying influence of Christianity contributed to the new political, social, and cultural forms that arose during this time. This is the time of feudalism, and feudalism is a political and economic system based on family and clan ties, on personal loyalty and mutual support, and on the exchange of personal service and labor for protections. So this is the time of serfs, lords, kings, and things like that. To accompany this feudalism, there was actually a mutual support relationship that developed between secular and religious leaders. So it was very much like the feudalism between kings and lords and peasants and serfs. Kings and nobles would defend the claims of the church or the pope, and in turn the pope would validate their authority. So they would say that God said that the king had the right to rule. The church emerged as an institution of learning and also as the principal patron of the arts. Christians needed buildings, equipment, altars, altar vessels, crosses, candlesticks, reliquaries, vestments, all this art portraying Christian figures and stories, and also copies of sacred texts. Christianity expanded from the borders of what had been the Western Roman Empire during this time. In art and culture, Christian ideas meet with the themes and styles of the North, and this creates new artistic styles. This is especially true in the British Isles. Now, the Roman armies arrived in Britain in 55 to 54 BCE. It was already a well-populated region. The Britons, who were Celts, were an ancient European people who lived in modern-day France, Ireland, and England. By 43 CE, the British Isles were officially under Roman rule. Ireland was actually never under Roman control. By 296, Christianity had reached Roman Britain and flourished. The Roman army abandoned Britain in 406 to help defend the Gauls against various Germanic peoples. This kind of quick pullout of the Romans caused Britain's economy to suffer. There have been all these large towns built basically for the Romans. They were centering around the commercial functions of the Romans, and they declined without Roman patronage. So it's at this time that Romanized British leaders took control. So they could be, when I say a Romanized British leader, that could be a person who was a Roman bastard. So the son of a Roman soldier and the mother of his mother would have been a local. Or it could be just a British person who was taught in the Roman ways. Anyway, these Romanized British leaders used mercenary armies to help gain power. The mercenary armies consisted of Germanic Angles, Saxons, Norse Jutes, and they began to settle their families in the northwest part of Britain. And they began to gain control of this area. Over the next 200 years, the people under their control began to adopt Germanic speech and customs. This created a fusion of these Romanized British people, the Celtics and the Germanic cultures. And we call this culture, this combination of these three different cultures, well really four different cultures, Anglo-Saxon culture. Anglo-Saxon literature is filled with references to splendid and costly jewelry and military equipment decorated with gold and silver. The Anglo-Saxon epic Beowulf, which was composed around the 7th century, gives us a really good description of Beowulf's burial. And Beowulf was buried with a hoard of treasure in a grave mound near the sea. Beowulf was part of the Anglo-Saxon culture, and he was a part of this warrior clan-based culture. So Beowulf describes his burial with this hoard of treasure, and a similar burial site to the one described was found near the North Sea coast in Suffolk at Sutton Hoo, who means hill. Now, by no means are we claiming this is Beowulf's grave. No, but the thing that's really cool is like the story of Beowulf talks about the specific burial type. Like, okay, we lay the body this way, we accompany it with this type of jewelry, this type of armor, and now they've found a grave that depicts that almost exactly. So that's why it's so interesting, and that's why it has that connection to the literature Beowulf. So this tomb was discovered in 1938 or 1939. It does have some solstice interactions. In one mound, which we call Mound 1, a male was buried in a ship with treasures. And we know that he was a wealthy, powerful man because, one, the ship is 86 feet long. And also he was buried with most of these grave goods. Not all of these were actually in the tomb, but some of these grave goods. Weapons, armors, things for the afterlife, luxury items like a large purse of coins. This is the clip that's on that large purse of coins. This was actually attached to a leather purse, and that has degraded, but this is the clasp that held it together. And here's the specific things that were found in that tomb. So a buckle, a helmet. Now this is highly restored. It's really hard to actually look at because this rough part is really the only part that's the original. So it's very misleading. And this is the shoulder clasp that would have held on your tunic. And this is that purse clasp I was telling you about. This white backing was probably made out of bone or ivory or maybe whalebone, but today it is a reproduction. But this stuff is all original. And here is a artist's reconstruction of what that helmet might have originally looked like. And then here is a depiction of how the helmet could have been worn and maybe some of the costuming that he would have worn. So see here, look, here's the reproduction of what that purse would have looked like. He's wearing, he's got weapons and knives and things like that. Since early prehistoric times, Celtic artists exhibited a fondness for abstract patterning. And by the 5th century CE, the animal style was dominant in the arts. This style displayed an array of serpents, four-legged beasts, and squat human forms. So we can see some of these things on the purse cover from Sutton Hoo burial ship. Again, I said this white part is a modern replacement, but would have maybe been whalebone, we think. The gold frame that these garnets are set in, and we also have blue checkered enamel in there as well. We have, so that's all original, and we have all these rectilinear patterns, and we also have figures and animals. The upper ornaments are polygons decorated with purely geometric patterns. That's what we have going on here. Flanking them, we have 4 animals with interlacing legs and jaws. Below, we have 2 large curved-beaked Swedish hawks attacking these ducks. So here they are, attacking these ducks. And then we have images of men that are flanked by these animals. And they're kind of like spread eagle between these 2 beasts. The species hasn't been identified, but they do think that it's from Scandinavia. They think that this whole motif of a man with these 2 animals is probably symbolic of strength or courage, or might be man versus nature. We also don't know the exact species of these. We think this is some sort of serpent. This could be like a feline or a wolf. It's just really hard to tell. It's not been well interpreted because we really don't know a lot about these cultures, but we are learning more because we are finding more things from them. Now this theme, going back to this man with the 2 animals on the side, or maybe he's being attacked, maybe he's fighting them, we just don't know. But that, we've actually seen something like that before. Do you guys remember this? The bull lyre from Ur. So perhaps this was some sort of theme or story that was widespread, because remember, this is back from the Near East. And then here we go. You know, this is 2500 BCE, and this is the 7th century CE, and we're still having a very similar theme. So it could be a coincidence, but it could not be a coincidence. The mingling of these regional styles, the hawks being Swedish, the interlacing animals are more Germanic, and that polychrome gem style is Eastern Continental. This is a rich blend. This rich blend of motifs is a great example of the Anglo-Saxon style that flourished in England and Ireland during the 7th and 8th centuries. And recently they actually found another hoard. So I just bring this in to show you some other artifacts. And here's some more. So it's the Staffordshire hoard is the largest collection of Anglo-Saxon gold and silver ever found. It's about 160 miles northeast of Sutton Hoo. And here you can just see that interlacing pattern that we saw. And a little bit of animals here. Like if you look really closely, this is actually an animal. There's his foot and there's his head. So I don't know, some sort of beast that has maybe lots of legs. Interesting. A similar style is continued here in a book from the, a page from the book of Matthew. You can see all that interlacing styles. You can read about this in your book, but I'll just show you a few close-up images that maybe your book doesn't have, that you can look at. Just to kind of show you the figures here, these angels. And then over here we have the cats and the mice are eating the host. The mice represent the devil, and they are attacking Christ, the host, and the cats represent good, and they are going to save the host from the mice.